So Dale Vince is the millionaire financial backer of Just Stop Oil. At least he was, until recently he's decided that he's going to get more impact in green policy if he funds Labour instead and directs his resources there. And everybody's like, oh, Dale Vince, oh, he's such a good guy. He just wants everything, he wants to save the environment. That's nonsense. Dale Vince is just worried about the bottom line. He's a businessman. He's worth over £100 million. Under the last Labour government, he donated £1.5 million to them and got £36 million in subsidies in return. That is the best investment a businessman could possibly make. He's not trying to save the environment. He's trying to line his pockets. And even funding Just Stop Oil was just was a way to try and make it seem as if there's this public surge of support for green policy that was so strong that people were throwing themselves into the roads. No, he's paying them. He's paying them to do that. And what I don't understand is when some people are being arrested for saying they want to encourage or want to fund criminality, for example, cutting down ULEZ cameras, they're apprehended by the police. Why is Dale Vince not being apprehended by the police as well for funding Just Stop Oil? So Dale Vince, I think he's a fraud and a phony, and he's just out for himself.
Did he really get £36 million, what, directly to his business for subsidies?
Ecotricity, yeah. And then he got subsidies from the Tory government as well, because obviously they're just like Labour these days.
So you think he's a grifter, basically?
All the green energy stuff is supported by subsidies, and while I think it's great that we're transitioning to self-sustainable renewable energy, because I don't want to give money to Russia or to the Middle East for oil. I mean, I think it's ridiculous to be handing money hand over fist to these people, and it's sheer graft at this point when somebody's enriching themselves to that point.
I mean, Leo, if you were in charge of Rishi Sunak's campaign, would you now be saying on Dale Vince, look what this proves, Just Stop Oil, Labour Party, they're both the same thing?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're worried about corruption, I mean, here's a prime example of buying government influence.
I mean, I think that's highly dubious and completely untrue, and I'm sure Dale Vince would aggressively disagree with that and refute it. And the truth is that actually, the idea of trying to paint Just Stop Oil as some establishment organisation is clearly absurd.
Well, they're richer than I am.
This is someone who's put his money where his mouth is to fund a group that's trying to take on the status quo. The establishment is the massive oil companies who fund the Tory party.
They're committing criminal acts to pursue their agenda. They're not just, stopping people in the street and asking them to take a leaflet.
Well, Just Stop Oil does a lot of things, and they've clearly worked, because everyone watching us right now knows what Just Stop Oil is. They've highlighted the campaign.
Hang on, it hasn't worked because we've got new licences in the North Sea. Well,
that's because you've got a Tory party who is paid and funded by the oil industry.
Have you got a gas boiler? Have you got a gas boiler? Yes, you do. So you also make.
How would you take your 18 flights a year, or how many flights you've taken this year, if we just stopped oil? Look, I get it. You are pro net zero. You support Just Stop Oil, but you're not actually doing anything. Well, whatever. You're defending net zero, Benjamin. But you, at the same time, took 18 flights as you boasted in the green room. You're not doing anything to get to net zero.
You've got a worse carbon footprint than Emma Thompson.
Well, hang on. I've just lived with the tribe in the ocean, so I achieved net zero for a week. I lived off trees.
A week?
Did you ride a bike to
How
get
hard?
But look, the serious point here is that we need to develop the technologies that mean that things like flights or cars don't have the damage that they do right now. Now, Dale Vince is a man who runs companies, you named Ecotricity, who runs companies that help us do that. We should be supporting him. Governments should be giving money to companies like that.
You think that the government should be subsidising companies? Because if his company had a decent business model and there was demand, why would they need subsidies?
Well, I didn't say subsidies. I said...
Oh, that's funding.
Well, no, because, first of all, you might invest in ideas such as research and development that do this. And, government obviously has a big sway in lots of contracts. And the truth is that the idea that you think that is the corruption and the dodgy part of British politics is complete nonsense.
That is corruption. That is money flowing. That is money... government influence being bought. Political influence being bought and somebody receiving huge amounts of largesse in return.
Leo, this might be a surprise to you, but some people actually believe in things.
Emily, I'm interested in the point you were just making. Are you anti the government subsidising innovative companies?
I think it's very difficult because the government will choose often those with the loudest voices or those who already have the most influence. So it's unlikely that they're going to be giving subsidies to a lot of newcomers and startups that don't happen to have whatever this guy has, whatever Dale Vince has, or in other areas. So I worry that they pick winners and they don't always get it right when it comes to subsidies. But no, I'm not against the government investing in research and development and giving, companies the chance to sort of put their hat in the ring when it comes to some funding. But I do worry about, the broad-scale subsidisation.
I'm against it. Governments are terrible at allocating money. That's why the Soviet Union failed while America rose. It's ridiculous. And from my experience, seeing the Arts Council funding comedy, they always pick the absolute worst comedians. If they're doing that across the science and technology sectors, then they'll be picking the worst companies in the world.
There's also the argument that bad companies that can't sustain themselves on their own should die.
Yeah.
Because it makes way for other companies to grow in their place. And also, how can they decide which technology is going to be the future winner? They can't really.
But if you are... it's not really that difficult to when groups of entrepreneurs go and pitch to venture capitalists, for example. There's a scheme called Innovate UK.
But they know what they're talking about.
Well, but they use the same
They're doing it with their own money.
Yeah.
So they're doing it... They've got some skin in the game. Governments don't allocate money like that. A government is somebody else spending somebody else's money on stuff they have no clue about. And that's why governments are terrible at spending money.
But you've gone off on a tangent because
solar
power and those powers are what we need.
Right, well, yeah, good luck with your flight with the solar power.